we just talked about how attribution is so difficult. And I think it is. In some cases, it's easier. Some cases, it's impossible. So we're going to go over the top 6 attribution model keys from Guy and Conrad. How do we think about attribution? Guy, what's your kind of leading tip on attribution modeling?
Gosh, pick a model and just run with it. No, I think.
Wow. Is that what you did with March Madness?
This is a very tricky subject for folks because one, it can get very complicated. You gave linear attribution models. I mean, look, you want to track linear, just use the default last click, call it a day. That'll get your linear stuff. That'll get your search
practice
click
areas that
call.
Works, right?
Well, I wouldn't even say that. It's for many client journeys, it works, right?
Right.
So for the linear client, this is the issue. The issue is what is the bulk? What's the best journey, the most exemplative journey that your clients are taking? If 99% of your clients are searching for a lawyer through non-brand search, click, call, hire, as Conrad mentioned, last click will do you just fine.
Right.
If, on the other hand, your clients are not finding you through a linear journey, such as through a referral, or here's the one I always use. Someone's in a car accident. They're in the hospital. Someone's family member starts being like, you know what, we might need to talk to a lawyer. They do a search. They find your paid search ad. They click on it. They come to your site. They're like, okay, I got the person's name. As they're discussing with the family, talking to a lawyer, maybe weeks or months later, they're like, hey, I wanted to bring up so-and-so's name. And then the client eventually calls you and hires you. Does your pay-per-click get credit for that? Is that a referral source in your CRM? You'll have no idea. And this gets to the point about whether you want to call it dark social or whatever, but this is a huge limitation of the attribution. So that's the example cases of the segue for some of the issues around attribution. I know I ranted there, so I apologize.
No, it's a good rant. Can I pick up your rant baton and run with it? By model, model really means guess, right? It is a guesstimate of human behavior. And that means it is very rarely accurate, right? And so what you're basically trying to do when you're using some form of attribution modeling is to apply a guess of how humans actually behave, and it is never going to be accurate, right? And there's, first click and last click. The thing that I used to work on was 40-40-20, where you give 40% to the first click and 40% to the last click, and 20% gets split evenly across all the other impressions or clicks that happen. Like, that's not how the human brain works. So they are bad at best guesstimates of human behavior. So you just have to understand that. Having said that, there's a lot of value in understanding how these things work together. I want to revisit our conversation, Guy, about how did you hear about us, right? You still pushing the how did you hear about us?
Absolutely. I mean, if you go read Rand's post, there's some examples that are provided by Liam Maroney from Notarize. But the whole point is that you still got to ask, because, call it like your fallback attribution. My point about that is that even if it's not perfect, right? Even if it's directional, the qualitative feedback you get from your actual potential clients and your actual clients has a lot of value, and it will help inform your decision making. So to me, it's just another way of doing attribution. There's trade-offs, right? The quantitative attribution modeling stuff has value, and so does the qualitative feedback from how did you find us?
Yeah, I have evolved my thinking on this self-reported attribution modeling. I've heard plenty of stories about the how did you hear us question where they answer something that doesn't exist. Oh, I saw your billboard, when you don't have a billboard, right? And so it's so frequently inaccurate, but, and this is the big but here, they're reporting on like, oh, I found you on Google. What Google? Google Local? Organic? LSAs? Ads? They don't know, right? And so that's also useless. For me, I think that your intake management software, your CRM system, you should have attribution modeling that looks at what you can automatically track through a really well set up reporting infrastructure. But you should also ask the how did you hear about us? And I phrase the how did you hear about us this way. And you'll get to the self-reported attribution modeling with this question. Hey, listen, we have a pretty strong reputation in the greater Atlanta area, and I like to send a thank you note to people who have, sent us referrals. Is there anyone I should send a thank you note on your behalf? And that will open up the question. Well, no, I haven't heard about you, but like I see your billboard every day when I drive to work or whatever it might be. So it's a great way of positioning yourself in a positive light. It's a great way of teasing out that question without looking like a craven, pathetic marketer. And so I am really. And as we talk about dark social, which by definition cannot be attributed, right, through these kind of automatic attribution modeling, this becomes really, really important, right? What else do you have?
So we talked about this ad nauseum, but I think for the simplistic version, to me, the most simplistic version is it's in the context of paid search, this idea of PPC linear attribution. So let's talk about how you actually set that up.
All right.
What would you do? What would you do if most basic version to track linear client journey?
I'll give you the most basic version, then I'll tell you I think this is insufficient. Okay. For many people. But here, the most basic version looks like this. Someone lands on your site through pay-per-click. Or they may call directly from that same kind of advertising network. They may
call tracking number in your ad.
We have a call tracking number in our ad. Same call tracking number on your site, right? Because it all leads back to that same source. We can talk about number pools if you want, but that's you wanted the most basic, so we're going to go with most basic. That call tracking goes into CallRail, right? And I'm doing this with a lot of my clients, and I just told you I think this is insufficient. But if you are doing a small volume, right? This is the way to do this. You use CallRail, right? And now I know that phone call came from CallRail. In CallRail, and this means you have to change the way your intake people are doing their job, right? And the law firm is actually operating. But within CallRail, two things need to happen. One, your whomever answers that call needs to give that call a thumbs up or thumbs down. That's built into the CallRail infrastructure, right? And so you're manual reporting on what I will now call a intake qualified lead, or what
somebody has to qualify the lead.
Someone's got to qualify the lead. And here's the thing. You have to do that for every single lead. Even if it's a garbage, spammy, crappy call, you need to know that Google Ads is generating 80% of the clicks on Google Ads are coming in as the insurance adjusters to looking for our phone number, right? Like that's super important. So you have to look at every single one and you thumbs up or thumbs down it. And then the next step on this for me, it's not that hard. You're using some matter management software when that consult turns into a client, and you can go back into CallRail and you can manually tag this as a client. The problem with this is we now have two manual steps. And most of you, the people who are doing this manual data entry, you are underpaying, maybe you're not underpaying them, but they're not paid extremely well. They're not necessarily invested in the firm in the way that an owner should be, and that is okay. But that means that the challenge of getting that data back into that system is very, very real. But that's how it was a long-winded rant, but this is how I would go about handling attribution for a linear, simple pay-per-click model.
Yep, love it.
Okay.
What's next?
This is one for me. I think you really have to use UTM codes and trackable phone numbers to differentiate between organic and local. And it's easy to do with UTM parameters on your clicks in from your GMB profile, now called GBP, Google Business Profile, back into your website. And you can use a tracking phone number, which was like a no-no for a long time, but that's kind of gone out the window. So like we can handle tracking phone numbers in your Google Business Profile.
Hugely important. We actually, I'll have to put this in the show notes. We actually have a guide on how to implement this yourself.
Like this is like no brainer, absolutely 100% click through to Guy's guide. If you don't have these broken out, this is the problem. The tactics that drive success in organic search and local search are very, very different, right? And the reasons that you perform well are very, very different. Not entirely different, but very, very different. And
and understanding the share of voice between local and traditional organic. It's really, I was, the thing that always still blows my mind today, but how many people will call the tracking number right from the search result without ever even clicking through to your fancy website?
Yeah. And that's even better. Like, I don't want that click. I want the phone call.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to differentiate those out. And honestly, if you're using an agency that isn't doing this for you,
call Conrad.
What do you think? No, don't call us. Like, this is just, call anybody else, right? Like, and this goes down to the reporting. If you're not looking at your performance and looking at those as different channels from an attribution perspective, like, you're not doing anything.
A lot of missed opportunity there. How about, what do you think about some practice area specific attribution tips? What kind of trends do you see for personal injury or criminal defense or anything that might be specific to practice areas?
Well, so I think our whole shtick here needs to be filtered with respect to your practice area. I'll use two very different examples. DUI lawyer, right? I got a DUI last weekend. I'm probably going to hire a DUI lawyer on Monday. Like, it is that linear path, and it's a very short sales cycle, right? That's great if you're using kind of this simplistic linear attribution modeling, right? I think that's a good thing. Let me go on the other end of the extreme, estate planning, right? The biggest problem estate planning lawyers face is everyone knows they should do this, but there's zero urgency. And so there's lots of hemming and hawing. No one really needs to pull the trigger until it's too late. And so the concept of dark social creating demand, like a nurture campaign on something like that, that's a very real thing. And so your practice area, to some extent, dictates the extent to which this kind of simplistic, automated linear attribution modeling is appropriate, and to the extent that it's completely not, right? So that's one thing that I would really, really think about.
Nice. Yeah. And I tend to think about it less. I think your examples are totally valid. I just tend to think about it more from like the target audience standpoint. Like, it's about who you're trying to attract. And there's some practice area specificity to that, but maybe you don't want the people that are doing a non-brand DUI search, click to call to sign up, right? Maybe you are more of a brand builder and a referral type of person. I'm not saying it shouldn't be an either or proposition anyway. But if your target audience tends to make a more meandering journey through the research and hiring process, you need a more sophisticated attribution model. And the other one that I wanted to just throw out there that did really strikes me from it's like loosely attribution, but is the metric that you're optimizing to. That is very different by practice area. And the most obvious one to me is plaintiffs' firms versus a lot of the other direct to consumer practice areas. If you're a plaintiff's firm trying to optimize and do attribution for like return on ad spend, not a great idea, because it just takes so long for those cases to matriculate, and your attribution system is not going to help you. We've talked about this before. In fact, I think we did a whole episode on this, but cost per acquisition of a new client, or as Conrad talks about, cost of acquisition of the intake qualified lead, those are much better metrics for certain practice areas.
Well, and they're so hard to. So this is kind of my final point on this. The conversions that Google Analytics is really designed for are not the conversions that you think about as a law firm. The conversion for your law firm is a consultation, right? Ideally, it's a client, but like ultimately, we're talking about consultations. What your marketing can deliver in terms of people sitting down who are interested in hiring you. None of the other shit matters, right? It just doesn't. The problem is, especially with Google Analytics is designed for looking at conversions online. And so there's all sorts of things that we've done to track leads. We can put conversions and goals, etc. Form fill, text, chat, phone call, right? Those are the things that we can report on as conversions, which really mean leads, which, as you guys all know, because you've yelled at me for my career, the leads are garbage. And you're right, the leads are garbage. So the things that are easily trackable as conversions in Google Analytics and online, it's not the thing that you're looking at. It's not the thing that you're optimizing for in most cases. And so this is a 201, not a 101 message, but if you can start thinking about your consultations and ideally clients, as opposed to form, fill, phone call, text, or chat, right? You're starting to think about your business in the right way. And by the way, you guys all want to think about it this way, but most agencies don't, because it's difficult to actually report back on that, right?
Yep, exactly.
So that's
one more
nuts.
Well, one more that made me think about as we're running out of time here. We'll try to jam this one in, but is back to what our agency's reporting on, understanding brand versus non-brand. That's a huge one. It's huge in paid. The class example that you, Conrad, always bring up are, agencies selling back your own brand traffic to you, right? Like when 90% of your, yeah, right, not even telling you. And so it's like, you're just, but you can look at this through organic. I think also from an attribution standpoint, it's very validating for folks that are like personal brand builders. If you see people searching on your name and that is growing, that's a good indication that your brand is getting more awareness and attention. And so that's another just attribution thing that you should be very mindful of and talking to your agency about brand versus non-brand.
So this is the sinister attribution model here. If you don't have access to your Google Ads account, you don't have any attribution modeling when it comes to the difference between brand and non-brand. And your agency very well might be selling you back your own brand traffic, pretending that it's car accident lawyer when they're really looking for Smith & Jones Law.